afternoon. Welcome to the Aware Show's Money and Manifestation Summit. Now, one of the things that we've talked about many times during the summit is the fact that we're constantly in a pursuit for money, or we are trying to figure out the bottom line, or make ends meet, or profit, loss, all of these figures around money. But what about the spirituality of money? What about the real reason that you believe that you want money in the first place? Well, joining me is Brent Phillips. He is the creator of the Formula for Miracles. And Brent's philosophies and ideas and programs go way beyond just the physical dollar. They go to a place of awakening and enlightenment. Welcome, Brent. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Lisa. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you back again. I've known you for, God, what is it, over a decade, Brent?
Yep, it's been a little over 10 years, I think.
Yep, over 10 years. I've been interviewing on my radio show for years and years and years. And I have watched you create so many incredible things in your life. You went from being injured to healing your body. You've had a beautiful baby with a wonderful relationship that you've created. During your transition, you've lost, 60 pounds. I mean, you have done so much in the years that I have known you. You are so committed to your growth. I applaud you.
Oh,
I really do. Yeah.
It's been quite a ride.
It's been quite a ride. What was that?
You never know what's going to come next.
You're amazing. I mean, you really have grown, and so have I, through the course of knowing you. So tell me a little bit about what you've created with the Formula for Miracles is kind of the combination of everything that you've been through, but with a little bit of a different perspective. Can you share a little bit about that?
So I know that some of the viewers today are a little familiar with my story, so I'll cover that very quickly and then get to the second part of it, which very few people know about, that led me directly to this new work we're going to be talking about. And so, those that get to know me, you'll know that I'm pretty much just a huge nerd. I grew up as your typical computer geek. I loved video games and electronics and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. And so I always figured I'd spend my life in technology. I went to college at MIT, majored in computer science, and it was there I discovered the internet. And so I was very lucky that when I was in graduate school in the mid-90s, also at MIT, I was a specialist in internetworking. In other words, I like to say that unlike Al Gore, I actually am one of the people that invented the internet. And so when the internet boom hit in the mid-90s, I left graduate school figuring I would move to California, start an internet company, work really hard for a couple of years, and then sell it for millions of dollars so I could retire to some tropical island. That was my plan. But things didn't work out that way. At first, I got off to a good start. I started a website company with my lifelong best friend and another partner, and we developed a lot of very high-profile websites. In fact, the very first website I ever created in my whole life was for the launch of the Sony PlayStation in the summer of 1995.
Wow.
And so the company grew quickly. We had several Fortune 500 clients, including several divisions of Sony, as well as Nissan Motors and Disneyland, and we were doing some amazing work.
Wow.
In fact, things were going so well that my partners and I started a second company to develop revolutionary online computer games. And so, long story short, things were going great for a while, but I was literally almost killing myself with overwork to make it happen, because I was the lead programmer and the only technical executive at two very fast-growing startups right at the beginning of the internet boom.
Wow, I can imagine.
So, yeah, I was working 80
hours
hours a week,
yeah,
with a conservative estimate, and I couldn't keep that up forever, and my body started to break down. And so, long story short, I developed a devastating case of repetitive stress injuries. I had severe pain in my arms, in my elbows, my wrist, my neck, my shoulders. And I spent the next 3 years in conventional therapies trying to get better. Didn't work. I just got worse. And so I went from working 80 to 100 hours a week and being what they used to call a force of nature behind the keyboard to someone who was in so much pain I could barely be on a computer 20 minutes a day. My pain was so bad I could only drive for short distances. And I had to move in with my parents because on some days I had to have my mother cut my food for me.
Wow.
So this was very, very serious pain, serious problems. And so, again, long story short, Eventually, my partners lost patience with me. I lost my position at the company. The website company was sold behind my back for millions of dollars. And I was left in terrible chronic pain with an awful broken heart in the middle of what, as they call it, the first dark night of the soul. And so the dark night of the soul is when everything goes wrong in your life. And for me, it was a couple things. In 1998, one was that my doctors, after 3 years of treatment, told me that I was incurable and that no amount of treatment or therapy could ever get me out of pain. And I had one of the best-known orthopedists who works on famous sports athletes look me in the eye and say, Brent, I hope you can find someone to take care of you until you die.
Wow.
Because you will never get better, you'll never be out of pain, you'll never work again, and you'll never have a normal life. So that was devastating.
Yes.
Yes. Right around the same time, my partners pushed me out of the company. I lost literally millions of dollars, and I didn't have a job. And I was in so much pain I couldn't work. I ended up on total disability. And then on top of that, what I call the cherry on the hot fudge sundae was I found out that my lifelong best friend and business partner had also been secretly dating the woman that I was in love with.
Oh, wow. Oh,
so it was a total wipeout.
And this was before you were 30, right?
Yeah. I was 27 years old when this all happened. Yep.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do. I was in severe pain. Doctors told me it was an incurable case. I couldn't find work because I was in so much pain. I had a terrible broken heart, and I was living with my parents that had no future. So I was very fortunate that I had a friend of mine turn me on to positive thinking. Nowadays, we call it the law of attraction, but back in the 90s, we called it positive thinking, and it's all the same stuff. And so I got really into positive thinking, believing that, well, when life has dealt you a hard hand, when you're down and out, positive thinking is what can pull you out of it.
Did that work?
No, it did not. Yeah. Unfortunately. Like I'm sure a lot of the viewers today can relate, that I went to positive thinking seminars, and I danced on the stage, and I high-fived my friends,
yep.
And I made a vision board, and I made sure I said my mantras 108 times a day, because someone told me if you do that, they have to come true.
Okay.
And, I joined a mastermind group, and I tried to look on the bright side, and I did all that stuff. And then, maybe 6 months into it, I realized that nothing had changed in my life. That it was just a fantasy escapism, and I decided it was a bunch of crap and threw it all in the trash. Now, as a little sneak preview, it's actually not. It does work, but only if you use it right.
Okay.
But like most people, I hadn't been trained the right way to use positive thinking, and so I didn't get good results. And so, long story short, I spent the next 5 years on total disability, getting all forms of treatment, trying to get better. I turned to alternative medicine because conventional medicine had given up on me. And I went to homeopaths, and I saw osteopaths, and I got deep tissue work, and I went to chiropractors, and I saw a naturopath, and I took supplements, and I did cleanses, and I had Reiki done on me.
Wow.
And I did yoga and Pilates, and I did all these different crazy diets and cleanses. I tried the master cleanse, and a kidney cleanse, and a liver cleanse. I did a raw food diet, 100% raw. I did an anti-inflammation diet and a zone diet, and I mean, on and on and on. I tried every machine and device and pain supplement known to man. I tried electric stim, I tried ultrasound, I tried cold lasers, I tried compression clothing, titanium tape, stretching machines, vibration machines, chi machines,
I tried all these too.
sonic stimulators, on and on, right?
Yeah.
I tried everything. And what happened was, to make a very long story very short, I was in a lot of pain. And I just wanted to get my body better so I could go back to work and restart my life. And so I wasn't looking that seriously at the spiritual angle, because I figured my problem is pain, and if I can make the pain go away, then everything will be fine.
Kind of the outside-in philosophy.
Right,
yeah.
exactly, the typical outside-in. And we'll be talking more about that, especially in regard to money, because most people are trained to think that, well, if I don't have enough money, the problem is money, and if I have more money, everything's good. That's not true.
Work harder and all that, yeah.
Right, there's an underlying spiritual, emotional issue that has to be resolved before any amount of money can solve the problem. I didn't know that at the time, and so I was running around doing everything I could on the outside to try to get better. And what happened, this was the same pattern over and over and over again. I'd find someone, and they'd have an energy healing technique, or a supplement, or a machine, or a diet, or an exercise program, or whatever it was. And I tell them about my situation, and they say, oh my gosh, Brent, I'm so glad you found me, because this is exactly what you need to get better. And they tell me their success stories about people who were like me and saw incredible results. And they tell me how 90 or 95 or even 99% of their clients or patients see remarkable results and get better. And so I would sign up, go take out another loan, go deeper in debt, and commit to trying it. And so I want all the viewers to know that when I say, for example, I tried acupuncture, I don't mean I had 5 sessions. When I say I tried acupuncture, what I mean is I went out and interviewed a bunch of Chinese doctors to find the best one in town. And I committed to seeing him twice a week for the next 2 years.
Wow. You really dive in.
I really dove in. And I was essentially, for the next several years, a full-time patient. All I did was chase therapy. I went from a healer to a doctor to a physical therapist, and that was my day. Every day, all I did was try to get better. And so I'd sign up, pay my money, and go to my sessions. And then at some point, maybe it would be 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years later, they'd shrug their shoulders and go, I'm sorry, Brent. I don't know why, but this just isn't going to work for you.
Wow, this has happened over and over and over again at that point. Okay.
And the first couple times it happens, it's a little disappointing. When it happens 9 or 10 times, it's frustrating. When it happens 40 or 50 times, you just go out of your mind.
Wow.
It's over and over and over and over and over.
Yes. Many, many, many people can relate to this. Yes, I've tried all of these things as well. Yes.
And they certainly seem to help everyone else, but not for me. And so, again, long story short, in early 2003, I agreed to have an experimental surgery. And instead of getting me better and reducing my pain, it got much worse, because when I woke up after the surgery, my arm was completely frozen at the elbow like this. Couldn't move my arm at all.
Wow.
And it was frozen like that for 4 months. And I tried manipulations and splints and all these different treatments, and nothing helped. I even had a second operation. And it was then that I got introduced to Terry O'Connell and her energy healing system. And so, again, long story short, Terry had been an old friend of my Aunt Lauren. So I knew her casually. And she had been a very successful financial professional. Wharton School MBA, super smart, made lots of money, big government contracts, right? Really, really a very successful person. She had a major health crisis that almost killed her. And she found this form of energy healing that she learned from a woman in Idaho that not only saved her life, but she was so impressed with it that she gave up this incredible career in finance to be a full-time healer.
Wow. Wow.
And I admit, I thought she was nuts.
Yeah.
I figured, hey, this woman's just gone off the deep end of the New Age pool, right? She'll recover her senses sooner or later. But I wanted to try it because I was desperate. And I was committed to doing everything I could to get better, even though it seemed hopeless. And so I had a session with her, and she explained to me a little bit about energy healing. And I had done Reiki and pranic healing before, so I was kind of familiar with that. And she showed me the process of muscle testing, which is how you communicate with the subconscious mind or the body's intelligence. And I was a little familiar with that. I had read some of Hawkins' work, like Power versus Force, and been to Chinese doctors and naturopaths who had used it. And she explained to me how the reason things don't change in our life is because we have subconscious blocks. And so the reason positive thinking doesn't usually work for people is that you're fighting your own subconscious.
So it just cancels out all the positive thoughts that you have.
Which more than cancels out all the positive thoughts. I think it is a conservative estimate to say that over 99% of your power is in the subconscious.
Yep, conservative. So, wow, that's conservative. Gone.
Yeah. And so she did some block clearing with me, and she asked me a lot of questions. We talked about my relationship with my parents and things that had happened as a kid, and the whole thing with my best friend and the betrayal and the millions of dollars I'd lost and all the pain I'd been in, all the frustration at how my life had just gone right off the rails and turned into a mess. And at the end of the session, she said, okay, we're going to heal your arm. And I was like, sure, right? Give it a shot. Everyone else has tried. You might as well give it a shot too, right? Yeah. And I didn't expect anything to happen. I was just sitting there just kind of looking out the window, thinking about what I wanted to watch on TV when I got home. And out of nowhere, something popped and shifted inside my elbow. It was like a tiny little firecracker went off inside my arm. And I remember I said, whoa. And Terry opened her eyes and looked at me and said, okay, Brent, try your arm. And I did, and I could move my arm.
Wow. Wow.
And so that was the miracle that hooked me on this. That was the miracle that really got me started in earnest on my spiritual path. And so, long story short, I devoted my life to learning and mastering energy healing. opened a professional practice a year later, and that's about when I first came on your show. I'm sure you remember that.
Yes, yes.
And ever since then, I've been devoted to learning and calling the best of the best from many different teachers and systems around the world to create a no-nonsense energy healing system that's practical and effective that anybody can use. And so I filter out a lot of the feel-good and a lot of the mythology and mysticism and just leave in what's really important, what really changes lives.
So as I've said, I mean, you have, you've lost 60 pounds, you developed a relationship, you had a child, you've done successful finances, but that is different than what you're talking about today. Is that right?
It is, because what I just talked about, that's sort of the end of the first half of the story.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And it gets more interesting from there because I did learn how to work with energy. I did learn how to clear blocks in the subconscious, how to do powerful manifestations, to perform instant healings, and I have seen over 1,000 miraculous instant healings in my clients over the years. So that doesn't happen by accident.
No.
But the thing was, even though I was able to see a lot of change in my life, even though I was able to get off disability, even though I was able to start making money and find a relationship and heal my body and lose weight, all that was great. But I was still suffering.
Most people would have stopped there and said, woohoo, I figured it out.
Right. But I was still suffering. I was still worried about the future. I was worried about my family, worried about my health, worried about the economy and politics and the environment and all these things. And so even though I had turned my life around, I knew there was something missing, especially because I went through another dark night in 2008. And so I thought I had all the answers. I had seen hundreds of miracles happen. I knew all about energy healing. I taught classes on doing intuitive readings. I taught people how to heal. I saw phenomenal success with myself and my clients and students. Yeah. But I went off the cliff again. And I didn't see this coming because I thought I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was awake. I knew how to talk to guardian angels and do intuitive readings and master the law of attraction. And I would have sworn to you that I was awake and spiritual. I wasn't. I just thought I was. And so my life had to flame out again to show me what I was missing.
So how did that manifest in depression?
Well, there were a couple of things that happened. The one thing that happened was I suffered the worst heartbreak of my life. We won't get into a lot of drama here, but a woman from my past reemerged and showed up in my life out of the blue. Right after I had gone through a soulmate class and manifested that someone show up, and then here she is, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, she's my soulmate, she's the one. Felt crazy in love with her, but she wasn't interested. And so I spent the next year and a half running around being her puppy dog best friend, letting her cry on my shoulder every time her latest boyfriend treated her badly. And didn't go anywhere with us. And so it crushed my self-confidence. I felt like such a loser. Yeah. And I really felt betrayed by all the spiritual work I had done because all my psychics had told me that she was the one, and I had manifested it and done block clearings, and I really thought it was going to work out, but it didn't. And so there was this giant, horrible, painful hole in my heart. The second thing that happened, which may have been even worse, was that I trusted the wrong person. And long story short, I unknowingly invested money in what was a fraudulent scam.
Wow. Wow.
I lost everything. And I ended up almost $1 million in debt.
So you have repeated the same patterns now in that.
And so this was even worse than the first time, because the first time I had lost a lot of money on paper, but I was able to walk away from it. The second time, because I was so deep in debt,
yes,
because back then the banks would give money to anybody that asked for it.
Right.
I had to declare bankruptcy just to be able to save my home and my car and my business.
Wow. Wow.
And so I was wiped out. And so I knew I was missing something. And it took me a while, but I finally think I found it. And that's what I'm here to talk about today.
My God, what a story, Brent. I mean, you have been there and back, and then there again and back. Yes. I would think that you are the perfect person to talk about the fact that you don't want to go there again.
No. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, prefer it remain a memory.
Yes.
And so the short answer is, what I was missing was I wasn't awake. There is such a thing as a genuine, profound spiritual awakening. And I want to emphasize to all the viewers watching today, it's probably not what you think it is. Remember, I was an energy healing professional. I taught classes. I had an enormous amount of success. I've written several books on the subject. I've taught at least 1,000 people how to do healing. I've done at least 10,000 hours of professional sessions. I've seen at least 1,000 miracles happen. I'm a very good manifester. But I knew something was missing because I wasn't awake. I knew about doing intuitive readings. I knew about law of attraction. I could talk to the dead and the guardian angels and all that stuff. So I would have sworn to you that I was fully awake, that I was spiritually aware.
Yep.
But I wasn't.
How did you know? I mean, how did you know you weren't?
I didn't. It's only after the fact, only after I started to wake up that I realized I was wrong.
Okay.
And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because I would have sworn to you a couple of years ago that I was fully awake and spiritually awake.
I remember talking with you about this, yes. But
I would have staked my life on it.
But after listening to your story about the awakening that you've had, your philosophies and perspectives, especially that I heard in the program, The Formula for Miracles, are different than I have ever heard you say before, because everything that you've been through twice is evidence that you have learned. It is. I don't know how to explain it, though. You could do a better job of it.
Sure. And so people will ask, well, what is awakening? Well, it's not learning about energy. That's great. It's useful. It's not using the law of attraction. It's not about talking to angels or knowing that you're a soul and have an eternal experience or reincarnation or any of that. That's all interesting and important, but it's not central. And so awakening, quite simply, is coming to crystal clear knowingness and understanding of what you are. This consciousness, this awareness that seems to be inside of us, what exactly is that? That is the essence of it. And so one thing I ran into with all my older work was that many different spiritual teachers will tell us in different ways. They'll say that we're all one and that everything is connected. And they'll say you have to be present and you have to release attachment to result and be in the now. And they're all correct, but those teachings alone were not useful for me. They were interesting, but nothing changed in my life. And it wasn't until I really started to wake up that I realized that until you're awake, everything else you do is going to be of minimal value, not zero, but not a lot of value, because you can do yoga and meditate and do energy healing for 40 or 50 years. And until you wake up, you will never get to the core of that attachment to result.
So was
you will
that
never get to the place where you can let go of your expectations and simply be present. It's impossible.
Was that, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yes, those things do work temporarily. You feel great for a little while. There is valid points in history behind a lot of them. But was there a moment for you, a pinnacle moment for you of a crack in consciousness, or a moment for you that you decided that was different than your state going forward?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
It was, for me, I didn't realize it, but I had been studying what we call non-duality. In the East, it's known as Advaita Vedanta. I had been studying it for a long time, but it never really clicked in me. And so a lot of my teachers would talk about these things, and they'd say, turn on the observer and drop in and be present and release your attachment. And again, they were all words. They were maybe helpful, but they didn't change much. And so it was when I took a class on non-duality that I was driving home the first day, and I stopped at a stop sign on 4th Street in Santa Monica, and it hit me. That's when I started to wake up. I said, oh, I get it. I'm not Brent. And in fact, it hit me so hard that for the next couple of days, I felt kind of nauseous, like I had the flu.
Ah.
Because when I started to wake up, I realized that everything I had learned, everything I thought I knew about myself and the world and life, was all built on a foundation that's a giant lie. I'm not saying it wasn't useful, but it was all built on a flimsy foundation. And so awakening, understanding what you really are, is truly the path to freedom. It's been called the foot in the door to enlightenment. It is the beginning of the end of suffering. It's also the end of seeking. Because once you wake up, you have found it.
So how did you get this information into the Formula for Miracles? Because as I've been listening, the beginning you tell me what it's not. And
yes,
explain that.
Yeah, it's very interesting because of our social conditioning, it's very difficult for me to just tell you what awakening is.
Right.
It won't go in, it won't click.
Right.
And so it's more useful to start exploring the things that it's not. Because then when we eliminate everything that it's not, what is left is that which it is. And so, of course, it really is all these things. In terms of money in particular, one thing I learned is that money problems are rarely about money. And so if you learn how to work with the subconscious and clear blocks and use the theta wave and manifest, that can make a big difference.
Right.
And so I encourage everyone to learn those things. But it's probably not going to make an enormous difference very quickly. During my first several years as a healer, I would consistently see my income go up 10, 15, 20% per year. So those tools are useful and they do deliver results. Learning how to clear the subconscious and manifest and work with the true teachings of the law of attraction, which, by the way, is a little different than what you see in most of the popular material. Most of that stuff doesn't work very well. With some slight adjustments, it can. But working from the ego, manipulating energy, delivered some results, but it wasn't satisfying.
I was just going to, because many people right now are emailing and coming through on the chat saying, well, what is it? What is it? What is it? And that is the ego.
And so, what I found was that the reason that it didn't keep working for me was I was missing something. And if I had lost everything and gone bankrupt, I probably would have stayed as a know-it-all, thinking I had it all figured out. But it made me desperate. And it made me realize when this all happened that I had no choice but to practice what I preached 100%.
So how does the ego, or why does the ego want to grasp on to a concept, saying, okay, what's Brent talking about? Let me grasp onto this real quick. What is it about the ego that is wanting to do that right now?
That is the nature of the ego. It has a survival instinct.
Uh-huh.
And so the ego wants to learn and it wants to acquire knowledge to make itself more powerful. And so in terms of, for example, the Hawkins scale of human consciousness, what he talks about is how the 0 to 200 ranges, you're living as a victim. You're in fear, anger, shame, guilt, all the negative emotions. And in the 200 to 499 range, that's the realm of the victor. You learn about acceptance, neutrality, and positive thinking. You become powerful and learn to use the power of your mind to get what you want in life.
Okay.
The trouble is, that will only take you to 499. That's not even halfway up the spiritual scale. And that's what awakening does. Awakening opens you to the whole higher realm of spiritual experience. And so, as long as you think you're the same you that you think you are, you can only go so far. And what I realized was that I could not continue to simply show people from the ego how to use energy to manipulate. And that's the trouble with a lot of energy healing and law of attraction material, is it's just more cannon fodder for the ego.
So how do you explain in the Formula for Miracles how to wake up? You did it, but I just didn't know how. Yeah.
Yes, and what I have found is that in all the different material I've studied, I mean, lots and lots of New Age material, law of attraction, energy healing, I've studied philosophy, I've studied the traditional religions. What I found is the real underlying message in all of these places is the same. It's trying to wake us up. The Bible, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, the Vedic scriptures, the Lotus Sutras, they're all designed to wake us up. But it doesn't work very well. And so when I finally started to wake up, and I started to experience what's called the avalanche of insights. And an avalanche is a great word because you kick off that one little piece that gets the avalanche rolling, and then it runs on its own. That's what awakening is. And so the purpose of this material is to start that avalanche.
That is what I experienced, is I listened to the first one, and the second one made more sense, and the third one made more sense, and the fourth one made more sense, because it does start, that's a great definition of what it is that you've explained in the Formula for Miracles.
Absolutely. And so you may ask yourself, and this is a great question, you'll say, well, Brent, if awakening is so important, if all of our spiritual and religious traditions have been trying to wake us up for thousands of years, why isn't it happening? Why is the world almost entirely composed of sleepers and a small minority of people who think they're awake but they're not?
Well,
and so that's a great question, because I'm a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
And it took me decades of study with the best teachers for it to finally click inside of me. And I had to ask, why isn't this easier? Why aren't more people waking up if there's so much material out there?
Because we're trying too hard.
Well, part of it is you're trying too hard. That's exactly right. What I found is there were three major culprits why people weren't waking up. And I designed my program, 30 Days to Awakening, specifically with this in mind. Overcome those obstacles so people could wake up quickly and easily and start that avalanche. Number one was simply that most of it is not presented well. Most of it gives you false impressions. They use bad metaphors, bad examples. Much of this material, especially the revered spiritual texts, are thousands of years old, created in different languages and cultures.
Well, I mean, for example, someone I just interviewed said, you know, in order to be financially wealthy, you need to believe that you're financially wealthy. That makes no sense to a person who has not experienced what you're talking about, because you're still grasping for things and stuff, and you're not.
Correct. You would say they don't have a reference point for it.
For believing, for really, truly embodying the belief. It's a good statement, but it doesn't make sense to those who have not.
It's not useful to someone who doesn't have a reference point.
Right.
It's correct, but not useful, and that's what I ran into with so much of the teachings. They're correct, but they're not useful. It's like the old Zen joke about the fish that doesn't know it lives in water.
Right, right.
Fish don't know they live in water because they don't have a reference point for the opposite.
Makes so much sense.
And the reason awakening is so difficult is, in our culture, we're so immersed and conditioned to believe in the great lie that creates all of our suffering that most people have no reference point for the opposite. That's why I can't just tell you what you are. It's like telling someone who's been poor their whole life, just feel and act rich.
So
it's correct, but it's not helpful. It's not transformative for them.
The Formula for Miracle guides you to a place of discovering that trueness of who you are, that awakening.
I was going to say it's very much like when I took calculus in high school. I thought calculus was hard, and it seemed really complicated, and I didn't like it. And I did well on the tests, but it was a lot of work and it was messy. And then I went to MIT, and I took calculus again at MIT. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, calculus is so easy. What was the difference? The difference was I had a good teacher. And so something that's articulated and presented properly can make a world of difference. And so I looked at all the different things I had studied, and I looked at what worked for me and what didn't, and I put together what I thought was a very step-by-step, simple explanation that will work for almost anybody to understand this. So that's number one, is most of the teaching out there is not useful to us, even though it may be correct. And so I tried to create something that is useful and transformative, that everybody will understand right away. Then there's a second problem. The second problem is subconscious blocks. And so we haven't talked a lot about that here, but in some of my older work, there's a lot of coverage of subconscious block clearings.
Yes.
And that's one of the important uses of the Formula for Miracles techniques. And so as an example, if you're full of subconscious blocks about money, it's going to be hard to make money. You can get a new job, you can get a fancy education, you can choose a different industry, you can try to do everything right on the outside. But if you're blocked on the inside, it's not going to happen.
You're going to sabotage it no matter what.
You will sabotage it. You will screw it up one way or another.
Yes.
And so awakening and spiritual ascension is the same way. Many of us are full of subconscious blocks and garbage, a lot of it from our ancestors and other lifetimes, things that don't even make sense anymore, but yet they're still within us. And so I found that the subconscious piece was keeping people asleep. It was sabotaging them on their spiritual journey. And so to remedy that, I used my older work of the block clearing and synthesized that with awakening and used the Formula for Miracles technology to include 5 block clearing programs. So that you can get your subconscious clear ahead of time, so you'll be much more likely to wake up and stay awake.
This is the end-all, the end-all, be-all part of this. Every single thing that you're going to hear in the rest of the Money and Manifestation series will only make sense if you get this part of awakening. All the other tools are great, but you have to transform the ego in order to fully absorb everything that everyone else is saying.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And
that's why when I developed my own system, I had it ready 3 years ago. And I was going to start teaching it, and then I woke up. And I took the whole thing and threw it in the trash and started again.
I can understand why.
I had to, because I could no longer just teach people how to manipulate energy from the ego. That was just so distasteful, I couldn't do it.
The ego is so powerful.
I will still teach you all that. I will teach you how to instantly heal. I will teach you how to manifest and clear blocks and attract a relationship and all that. But it will be so much easier, so much more powerful if you're awake first.
The whole concept behind ayahuasca is people go and they have these awakenings from drinking this, thing from the Amazon. And what all that does is it sheds the ego so that you can have, but it's through the, outside in order to crack open the ego. I just interviewed someone who's done ayahuasca like 1,000 times, and I could see why he did that, because he had such a gripping ego that did not allow him. He had a transformative experience because it broke his ego down. It took him 1,000 times to do ayahuasca to break his ego. Now he's a wonderful, human.
And those experiences are useful because they give you a reference point of truth.
So this through the 30 days, people will understand. The first probably half of this program is breaking the ego down.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to learn to see through it.
Yeah.
And realize that you are not the ego. You are not the mind. You are not the body. You are not a soul. Those are all lies. And that's kind of hard for people to accept. Like I said, when I started to wake up, it made me nauseous for a couple of days.
I understand.
Because I realized that everything I thought I knew and had been teaching and practicing, it wasn't wrong, but it was all based on a lie. And so this is what it will lead you out of. And so the second reason people have trouble waking up is subconscious blocks. So I've put in the Formula for Miracles technology to clear that, to greatly increase the chance that you can wake up and stay awake. The third piece that was missing is perhaps the most challenging, and that's the piece of embodiment. And so that's taking spiritual knowledge and concepts and making, as the Chinese say, the longest journey in a person's life is the 18 inches from the head down to the heart.
Yeah.
That is embodiment. On the Hawkins scale, awakening takes you to 500, the vibration of love. Embodying awakening takes you all the way to 1,000. Total enlightenment, complete freedom of suffering.
Yep.
And so the embodiment is the hardest part to teach, because even though we may have had some great masters on earth, who were awake and did embody that, they couldn't give that experience to other people.
That's why people sit in front of gurus, so that
Right.
they can feel the energetic embodiment of the enlightenment they are. Yes.
And so the embodiment is a challenge, because awakening proper is an understanding. It happens in the mind, ironically. That the key to the death of the ego happens entirely within the ego.
This is such a buzzing. I'm feeling such a buzzing. I don't know if anyone else can experience this.
Funny, isn't it?
It's so exciting. It opens up a whole new world talking like this. This is inspiring. It's like a whole new part of my brain is opening and cracking open.
It is.
Talking with you. Someone had just asked, can he explain why it's a 30-day process? I don't have 30 days to turn my life around. These are great questions, because they're questions of the ego.
Yes.
Tempting to grapple.
That's a great question. The answer is, when you understand what this you is referred to in the question, when you're fully awakened, you'll laugh.
Giddily.
Yes, you will laugh gleefully at all the drama and realize it's not you. And that is the essence of awakening, is knowing what you are. When we say, well, my life has to be turned around, well, who is this person or thing that has the life? That's the ego. And when you wake up, you would never ask a question like that. I don't want to sound demeaning, it's just that's the truth.
It's what pain is also. It's the ego holding...
All suffering is created in the mind through the ego. That's why awakening is the beginning of the end of suffering. Embodiment of awakening, what we call an enlightenment or ascension, is the complete elimination of suffering. That'll take some time.
I just got to share with you, there's a hummingbird that is outside my window right now trying to get in. I've never seen this little guy before.
And so some of the technology I developed to help with the embodiment is a consciousness shifting video I made with one of my colleagues.
Tell me about that.
Designed to actually train your brain and nervous system to start to see beyond the illusion of the reality around us with open eyes. And a lot of people will start to see energies and auras at some point from this training. Because it's one thing for me to sit and say to everybody, the world is an illusion, it's not real. But yet, unless you see that for yourself, you haven't embodied that teaching.
I totally got so absorbed in this conversation, Brent. I'm sorry, I forgot to give the website.
Yes. That might be useful.
We were both so involved. The website is theawareshow.com/Phillips. Phillips. I'm sorry. That's where people can go, and we're talking about this concept of enlightenment. We forgot the practical. Go to the website. You can read about this here it's 30 Days to Spiritual Awakening. Ending the struggle with money, ending the struggle with pain. These are all the attempts on the ego, or of the ego, to grasp onto something limiting, I guess I could say. But to experience really truly what Brent is talking about, I encourage you to dive in. It is a transformative experience. I can't even explain. Brent and I are trying to do that, but go to the website, theawareshow.com/Phillips. Phillips. Sorry about that, Brent. Keep going.
No problem. And so we created this consciousness shifting video as an embodiment tool that you can use every day. That for many people will help you to actually feel the energy, if not see it. So that it's not just me telling you the world is an illusion. When you use this enough and learn how to entrain yourself and see truth, you will literally watch the world around you disappear with your open eyes. Because it's not there. It's an illusion. And I want you to see that for yourself or feel it in your body.
It gets rid of stress. Wow.
It's amazing, isn't it? And so in a couple minutes, I will do some of that right here live on the call.
Great.
Because that's usually a little more powerful than what we get from the video. And so we'll do that as an exercise. And so I do want to address, I'm sure there's a lot of questions about, well, how will this help me make money? And that's a valid question. I'll give you the Zen answer first, which is as soon as you are crystal clear about what this you is that has money, that kind of question will disappear from your life.
Wow.
But until then, The way I see it is my whole life up till awakening, it was kind of like slogging through tar. Everything was really hard. I could do things and get places, but it was a lot of work, a lot of energy.
Struggle.
It smelled bad, and it was messy and nasty.
Wow.
That was most of my life. And even the most powerful tools of energy and manifesting in the law of attraction, they can get you somewhere, but you're still stuck in tar. And so the reason I want people to wake up first is because once you start to wake up and the ego starts to lose its grip, the death grip it's had on this human experience, then it's like turning the tar into water. It's much easier, it's faster, it's cleaner, it smells nice, and you come out the other side refreshed.
The thing is, you would never, ever know that your ego has this death grip until you go through this transformative experience.
That is exactly right. That's the fish that doesn't know lives in water. And that's why trying to get people to wake up can be difficult, because they have no idea what you're talking about until they've experienced it.
I've only gone through half the program, Brent, and I'm already getting the essence of what it is that you're talking about.
Good.
Just the vibration of this conversation is so high, is so crystal clear. I'm so excited to finish this program. I've only gotten through 15 days.
Now, most people start to wake up between day 7 and 15. Most people don't need all 30 days. I think once you get into it, you're not going to want to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
But just in case some people take a little longer, there's actually 30 days plus 3 bonus days for people that want a little more. I just wanted to play it safe and make sure as many people as possible needed what they needed to start to wake up. But most people start to wake up in the second week, has been my experience. And so I call awakening, it is a great spiritual supercharger. It will make everything you do so much more powerful. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it will make your spiritual work within a year or two between 10 and 1,000 times more powerful.
And mostly it gets rid of the stress. I mean,
yes.
We talk about the effects of stress on the body and the cortisol in the brain and all of that.
Absolutely.
We don't know
as long as you're not awake, the stress relief techniques you use are helpful, but they can only work around the edges. So you can meditate and do breath work and do yoga and get massages, and that's all great. There's benefits to that. But it's not going to crack the core. The core of stress is simply a false identification. There is a great lie that our entire society is built on that's causing all that stress. And when you start to wake up, you realize that the stress is an illusion. And you will actually start to be more present, and you will be less attached to the result of the things you do. And ironically, that will make you far more powerful, and you'll almost certainly make a lot more money.
Why?
Everyone's a little different, but most people see a jump in their income of at least 50%, sometimes more, within a year or two of awakening.
But why?
Well, that's a great question. And so it comes back to the law of attraction. One of the great law of attraction teachings that's so powerful is that what you resist will persist. And so in NLP, this is called away from motivation. And in other words, most of us are using the vast majority of our personal power to resist and fight the things we don't want to have happen in life. So we're fighting poverty, we're fighting credit card debt, we're fighting a crappy job, a long commute, a difficult living situation, high taxes, whatever the issues are. And so we're fighting so hard to try to prevent all these things we don't want. What we don't realize is the more you resist it, the more it becomes your truth.
Mm.
And so we run around going to positive thinking programs and law of attraction seminars and learning to manifest, not knowing that we're manifesting backwards. And so I don't want to scare anyone, but learning law of attraction techniques and using them from ego can actually make things worse.
Could
because
be.
Now you're resisting it even more powerfully.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more of a gripping of the ego.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's why sometimes people report, well, I did all these wealth building programs and I lost my job and things are worse. That's because you were resisting it more and more and more. And so how do you stop resisting poverty? How do you stop resisting loneliness? Or The toughest one is, how do you stop resisting pain?
Right.
That's a tough one, isn't it? And so the answer is simple. The answer is awakening. When you wake up and see the real spiritual truth, all of that other stuff starts to disappear.
Pain is also a gripping. It's a tension. It's like you had in your elbow, or my back pain. It locks. It gets so tight that it locks, and this starts to melt away. It's so interesting to relate pain with ego. It's true.
And that's why the Buddha said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing as pain without suffering.
Huh, really?
Animals do it, wild animals. Because they're completely present. There's no thinking about the pain. There's no story. And so it simply becomes a sensation that is not resisted, and the suffering disappears.
Interesting.
That sounds a little weird. But as someone who lived in chronic pain for 20 years, I can tell you that there is a difference between pain and suffering. And when you free the mind through awakening, the suffering starts to decrease. And I say starts to because it's actually very rare that someone pops right up to the enlightenment vibrations instantly upon awakening. That's kind of like winning the lottery. It happens, but it's rare. Eckhart Tolle happened that way. He was sitting on the park bench, asking himself, who is this me that is having awareness and perceptions?
Oh.
And he woke up.
Yes.
And he popped all the way up to the ascended levels, the 700-800s. And he laid in bliss on the park bench for however many months.
And that's the power of now. That's why he talks about that.
And that is the power of now. Then he lost that because he had to come back down so he could write it down and spread it, share it with the world.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Now, I want to point out, that's rare. That's like that's like making millions of dollars in the lottery.
Right, right. You explained.
But most people, it's not typical. And so for most people, they make their millions of dollars through a job or through an inheritance or by starting a company. So most people achieve those higher vibrations, grace, peace, enlightenment, through a slower process of embodiment.
There's
you will start to notice the fears disappear immediately.
Fears
disappear.
disappear.
It takes some time before they really go. There may be a process.
Again, the website is theawareshow.com/Phillips. I'm going to some questions here. So one of the people is asking, what's different between what you're talking about and other methods of awakening, and why should somebody look at this one as opposed to sitting in front of a guru, or other examples of it?
My experience has been, both for me personally and with the many hundreds of students and teachers and others I've worked with, that the other methods don't work. You'll get benefit from it, but you can sit in front of a guru for decades, and you are not going to experience what that guru is experiencing. Many people who are devotees of what's called bhakti yoga, the devotional path, where you devote yourself to a yoga practice or a guru or a meditation, there's nothing wrong with that. But typically people come out 20, 30, 40 years later and they're still not awake. They still haven't woken up.
Now explain the technology that you've embedded in this particular program that would enable somebody to access these levels of consciousness a little bit quicker.
And so there's three pieces to it. Number one is I sorted through all the different stuff I had learned and eliminated most of it because it was not useful, even if it was true. And so what's left is what is essential and important and right to the point. I can almost guarantee that once you've been through this program, you can pick up any of the great spiritual works, including the Bible, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, read the Vedic scriptures, read the Gita, anything. And you will understand exactly what they are talking about, every single word.
Wow.
Because they're all trying to wake you up. And so part of it is the presentation, that I'm an engineer, and there's nothing wrong with feeling good, but the New Age and Law of Attraction and wealth building worlds are full of a lot of hot air and feel-good fluff. Now, there's nothing wrong with feeling good. I love to go and sit in a hot tub. Why? Because it makes me feel good.
Right, right.
But I don't expect my hot tub to make me rich. And so I separated out all the feel-good and the mysticism and all that. And so you can do it if you want, but that can be very distracting from the core message. And so I chose 30 days because for most people this material is so profound and so different than anything you've seen before that it takes the mind some time to process it.
Right.
That most people can't just zip through and get it all in one day. Maybe. Right. Unlikely, though. For most people, it takes about a year or two for the avalanche to subside. My avalanche lasted about a year, maybe a year and a half. When I just got it and there was no more further refinements, it's like, I get it, I'm awake, you know, it all makes sense.
How do
but
you
again, I'm a pretty smart guy, and so I've been studying for decades ahead of that. Number two is the subconscious piece. Many of us have subconscious blocks, and so many of us have a false idea of what awakening and enlightenment are. For most of us, what we think of as enlightenment is actually simply a highly developed spiritual ego. And a highly developed spiritual ego is going to cause you to suffer and be in prison to the ego eternally.
And to be disconnected from
yes.
a lot of things, yeah.
Exactly. And so if you think that you or other people are better because you have studied longer or done more yoga or seen more miracles or meditated more, or you can have great spiritual experiences, that's going to lead you into the grip of the spiritual ego.
And now I would love to know how you live your life differently, and I also want to get to the video part that you mentioned that we were going to do live. But how do you live your life differently now as opposed to before?
You know, it's funny. It's like Yogi Berra said, it's the same but different. There's the old Zen joke where the student asks the Zen master, "Master, what should I do if I want to become enlightened?" And the master says, "You will chop wood and carry water." And he says, "Great, I'm going to do that." "Master, what am I going to do after I'm enlightened?" "You will chop wood and carry water."
Right, right.
And so on the outside, things look the same. But on the inside, it's completely different. Because you realize that you are one, you are completely connected with the divine will.
Nice, nice.
And there's nothing else out there but the divine will.
Ah, nice.
And so all your regrets about the past start to vanish. Because you realize that was more just God's will manifesting on earth through humans. And when you're fully awakened, you realize that what you thought you were, the ego, is a giant lie. And so it wasn't you that made mistakes or did dumb things or wrecked a relationship or lost your job. That was the ego. It's not you.
Makes sense.
So there's nothing to regret.
Yeah.
There's also nothing to worry about because in the future, it will also be nothing more than the divine will manifesting on earth through humans. You will be taken care of. And there's nothing to worry about. The environment, politics, corruption, wars, there's no place for worry for the awakened person. There is a place to take action. You may wish to demonstrate, write letters, vote, donate money. But it will be a detached action where you stay connected and grounded because you cannot be affected by any of that. That's why Jesus said, "You can hurt me or kill my body, but you can do nothing to me." When you're awake, you'll understand that 100%.
Can you give us the experience you were talking about in terms of, there's a video in the program, which is to be found again at theawareshow.com/Phillips, Phillips, 2 L's. And tell me about this video that's in the program.
So this is a process called consciousness shifting. And so this is to help tune you into the truth, to help reconnect you with the all that is, to help break the grip of the ego, in particular in the way what you see and what you feel and what you hear. And so I encoded it onto a video that's included in the package so that everybody can use it as much as they like to learn to see auras, to see energy, to feel that peace, that knowingness that everything is going to be okay. If I had to describe it in a nutshell, I would say that when you use this process, it's like reaching out and grabbing the okay knob and turning the okayness of everything way up.
Oh, that's cool.
It's kind of funny, but you'll see.
Okay.
So what I'm actually doing is I'm entraining the energy around us so that you can see a little more of what's really there. One thing that blew my mind when I learned this was that the human eye can only see a tiny portion of the spectrum of light. And so if the entire electromagnetic spectrum were 2,000 miles long, the human eye would see 1 inch of that.
Wow.
So we humans see just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's really there. What I'm doing here is expanding that 1 inch just a little bit. You start to see more of what's really there, start to take a peek behind the veil. And so for some people who are very sensitive to energy, you may get visual effects. You may notice that an aura appears around my head or around Lisa's head. You may notice that my face changes. If you see other faces showing up on me or Lisa, that's just incarnations from other lifetimes. No big deal.
Huh.
They're all there all the time.
Yeah.
But the mind is trained to tune them out.
Right.
When we pull back the veil a little bit, you'll see they're there all the time. You may notice the entire room may fade out to black or to white. If that happens, don't worry about it. That's all normal. And you may notice a buzzing you feel. You may notice auras or halos around objects. In particular, even if you don't get the visual effects, because some very advanced spiritual teachers don't see energy. I do see energy. I see auras and halos and all that stuff now. You know, I see blue flames shooting out of people's fingers. It's kind of cool. If you don't see that, don't worry. Not everybody is visual. You may feel it. You may feel that everything is more okay. You can feel your body more. You're more present. And there's like a sense of optimism and hope. If you're in pain, it will likely decrease. One of my teachers used to go and do this with women in labor. And he would sit there for 5, 10, 15 hours using this process to take away all their pain. And as soon as he'd walk out of the room to go to the restroom, they'd be screaming again.
Wow.
So this can also be turned into a very, very powerful pain relief technique that I teach in my live classes. And so for those that are watching, to follow along is very easy. First, I want to give you the instructions. If it gets too intense or too weird, you can just blink your eyes and look away.
Okay.
Everything's back to normal. So if it gets too weird, if my past lives are showing up and the whole room fades out, don't worry. Just close your eyes, blink, look away, and it'll all come back to normal. For the instructions are easy. If you can, relax. If you're in a room where there's a lot of light, it's not required, but it's easier to see energy in low light. Not darkness, but low light. So if you can pull down your window shade or turn off the overhead light, that's helpful. Not critical, though. It just makes it a little easier to see the energy. What I would recommend is pick either me or Lisa, look into our left eye. They say that's the window to the soul.
Okay.
And I'll start, and we'll go for a couple minutes. And then, Lisa, after a couple minutes, you can let me know if people have questions or comments, or if you have questions or comments.
Okay.
And then we'll answer them, and if we have time, we'll do another round. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks.
All right, so go ahead and get comfortable. And remember, not everyone sees the visuals right away, but a lot of people do. So here we go.
Wow.
All right, and I'll bring us back to normal again, whatever that is. We can take a couple of questions and comments, and if we want, we can do another round.
Someone is saying that they saw a glow on the left side of your head, your shoulder, that was a violet color, a violet.
That's the aura. Yep. Yeah, it's when you see halos and auras, they usually don't show up symmetrically and perfectly. They're usually only on one side or the other. Not always, but usually you'll see it a lot more on one side. So
Right,
that's
interesting. Interesting. Someone else is saying that they saw your eyes shifting, like that you got a set of 4 eyes, which
Yep.
is fascinating.
Yeah, that's another lifetime overlaid upon this one.
What is it that you were doing here? Was it a feeling, or what were you doing intentionally?
It's sort of like a feeling. It's an entrainment.
An energy transmission?
It's sort of. It's a little different than a transmission because it's not like I'm blasting you with energy. What I'm doing is I'm tuning the energy in the environment around us. I'm weakening the veil, making it thinner around us, so that it's easier for us to see more of what's already there.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Someone else says that they saw a hand on the right side of your body, a hand, like right up in the right side of your head.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so once again I want to mention that there are these 30 days of awakening. Within this process is talking about shedding the ego, talking about what the ego is and isn't, going to these processes of enlightenment, and also the video. It's an experience. It's a huge experience. As we've been talking, I've been feeling this kind of buzzing, this sense of, I get what you're saying. I completely see the image and the picture and the words. I think it's because I've been listening to it. My quantum awareness has increased. My stress has decreased. My calm and focus has increased. Those are the feelings that I'm having from experiencing, listening to this package. And everyone will have their own experience, but it is so worth trying. And I mean, just to understand the grip that the ego has on us and how much we are keeping our eye on the prize, or the pain that in our body is a functionality of the ego, and so many different things. Just even in, experiencing the whole concept of the ego is worth it. And it lets go of that grip. It's huge offering that Brent is doing here, because it's 30 days, but you'll get the experience in probably a shorter amount of time, or not. I mean, it's the individual's experience. The website again is theawareshow.com/Phillips, Phillips. And are you still giving that energy, Brent, as you're
I'm keeping it at a low level.
Okay.
But once you get sensitive to it, you'll notice that it happens on its own.
Okay.
Very common if you're meditating or doing yoga or exercising. Plenty of times when I'm at the gym, I got to stop and ground myself because the whole freaking gym disappears around me. Because when you're exercising, the ego starts to lose its grip because you're more present. There's less thought. And then the world disappears. So that may happen, especially happens a lot when I go to yoga or when I'm exercising. But you learn to quickly come back when you need to.
Interesting. So it's about a shift in consciousness. It's about mastering your attention, and it's about the beingness of what it is that you want to create. Everyone says that you have to really believe that you are the state that you want to be in. The believing doesn't necessarily come from the mind. It comes from your state of being. Who you are being reflects your belief systems. You can look at that in anywhere that in your life right now and see what's showing up. It'll reflect back to you what your belief system is. Well, what about your belief system being a magnet for what it is that you want to create and attract in your life? And this way to do that is by letting go of the grip of the ego, of wanting it out of a place of survival, and shifting into a place of being it and becoming it, so that it's effortlessness. That is the whole key to effortlessness, is absolving the grip of the ego. So I just want to say thank you for being here and sharing this most enlightened tool with us of all that you've done. Your entire body of work has kind of accumulated into this one particular offer. And I appreciate that you, in your analytical mind, was able to put it together in a 30-day program for people. It is truly an experience worth experiencing. You get to finally experience you. It's beautiful.
Yes. You finally get to understand what you really are.
Yep.
And when right before I finally started to wake up, there was a non-duality teacher who made quite a claim to me. He said, Brent, if you were to offer me $1 billion in cash in exchange for my awakening, I would laugh at you and say no. And that seemed like quite a claim, because $1 billion, you can do a lot with $1 billion, can't you?
Right.
And I thought he was only half joking. Then when I actually woke up, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's 100% serious. This is so much more valuable than any amount of money.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say that this is your foundation in genuine spiritual truth. There's a lot of other great work out there. I've done a lot of programs on how to manifest money and clear blocks, as well as have other people. But without the foundation, you'll be stuck using it from ego, and you're just chasing your tail. You know, you might be able to pull in a little more money here or there, but remember that the core of your money problem is nothing to do with money.
Wow, that's so great.
Yes, it has everything to do with spirituality. And so as long as you think money is going to solve all your money problems, stay there as long as you need to be. I used to think that for a long time.
But this is a perfect place for you to be on this summit of money and manifestation, because this is a healing that people really need around their money space. It's clearing the blocks, it's clearing the ego, clearing the blocks, and experiencing the awakening around your essence of who you truly are. I can't explain enough of it. I don't want to shadow it. I want you to experience it. So go to the website, which is theawareshow.com/Phillips. I invite you into this place. It's not even a place. It's non-local, of awakening, of realization, and just enjoy. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. There's free gifts on there that you can listen to as well and kind of get a taste of the energy. And have fun. Have fun with it. Enjoy. Thank you so much for being here, Brent. Thanks for sharing with us your experience. Your story is incredible, and it's inspirational. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and I hope that together we can wake some people up.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you. And until next time, I invite you all to stay aware.